Americans have long seen their soul, their failures, and their triumphs through their writers. No other country has produced such a noble body of literature as the United States. Hello, I'm Jane Kasmarek, and welcome to the Great American Authors series. Between the War of 1812 and the Mexican-American War that ended in 1848, America experienced an exuberant economic period of growth. It was a time of Jacksonian democracy and opportunity for all. It was a time when America solidified its economic and intellectual institutions in the Northeast. And it was during this time and from this place that American authors produced the nation's first great wave of classic literature. Emily Dickinson, the second of America's great originals, was also a product of America's East Coast intellectual establishment. Her poems have transcended time.
She walked the corridors of her Massachusetts home, dressed all in white, and was known as the Nun of Amherst. A recluse, she became more famous in death than in life for her unique and inspiring poetry. She was Emily Dickinson, America's first truly great woman poet.
I'm nobody. Who are you? Are you nobody too? Then there's a pair of us, don't tell. They'd banish us, you know. How dreary to be somebody. How public like a frog. To tell your name, the livelong day, to an admiring bog.
Emily Dickinson's style was experimental. Her poems stretched the limits of traditional verse. She used dashes instead of commas for punctuation. She produced unconventional and jarring rhyme schemes. And she expressed the independent spirit of American women in soulful, vibrant tones. Unique and passionate, Dickinson's poetry would echo down through the generations. Emily Dickinson was born in Amherst, Massachusetts on December 10, 1830, part of a family whose ancestors arrived with the first Puritan colonists 200 years earlier. Outgoing as a teenager, Dickinson attended Amherst Academy, where she became popular among her fellow students and famous among teachers for provocative essays. Dickinson attended Mount Holyoke Female Seminary, recently founded by Mary Lyon. Once more, her independence caused a stir when she was the only student to refuse Christian indoctrination. She returned to Amherst in 1850 and immediately began to write poetry. Oddly, Dickinson's life and poetry were a study in contrasts. She wrote more than 1,700 poems, yet published only 7 of them in her lifetime. Famous in later life for her solitude, her poetry is vivid and worldly.
By a flower, by a letter, by a nimble love, if I weld the rivet faster, final fast, above. Never mind my breathless anvil, never mind repose, never mind the sauty faces, tugging at the forge.
She never experienced physical love, and yet her verse fills the senses and expands the heart. Emily Dickinson died in 1886. Over the past 100 years, her work has inspired a century of American poets. Dickinson herself is part of that elite group of English-speaking poets that include Shakespeare, Coleridge, Poe, Whitman, Cummings, and Eliot.